Alright, what's up guys, we're back here with another, TV show review, and I usually include these with my movie reviews since they're still stories, so yeah, I just recently finished all 5 seasons of Gotham. The last episode date was, this show ended on April 25th of this year, which is 2019, but again, this is my second TV show review. The first one was Hell on Wheels, which is another show that I finished that had 5 seasons as well. But this show, actually, I'm hoping that they make a sequel show to it because they just recently came out with a show called Pennyworth. Well, that's coming out. And I'm pretty sure it's about the Alfred Pennyworth from this one, but he's in the Navy SEALs, in the Special Forces still. And he's a lot younger, so hopefully they'll make a sequel when Bruce is older. But this was a show that I was following for a while, and this is probably another one of my favorite shows of all time. I highly enjoyed the mafia-esque setting of this show, and it pretty much maintained that. The one thing I will say, though, all the way up until the last 2 episodes, which were completely unnecessary, the fifth season should have ended on episode 10, but those last 2 episodes really didn't seem necessary, even though it was showing what happened after. It was very bogged down, the ending. So I look at it from a standpoint that it ended on episode 10, which would have been a perfect ending in my opinion. So, and you know what? That could have set it up. You know what? They could have gone up with a 6th season and done it, but no, they decided to cut it off of those last 2 episodes that really didn't make sense, so that was their fault. But this was a show this is probably one of my all-time favorite shows because it was a very, very unique take on the Batman story. It was mainly about Detective Gordon, but it wasn't just about him. The main character was Detective Gordon by far, but it was about all the characters. There was several sequences with Penguin, Fish Mooney, the Riddler. Everybody gets part of the story, even Alfred and Catwoman and Harvey Bullock. Everybody. This show is one of the greatest shows I've ever watched. I can say that hands down. My favorite part of this show is just the wacky shit that happens throughout it. There is so much wacky shit that just happens throughout the course of this show. All the villains in this are just wacky and all over the top. And with that put into a mafia setting and a turf war with all these fucking gangs and stuff, this show is batshit crazy, and I will say that right now. And I'm surprised that it got by with a TV-14 rating. There's some brutal fucking shit in the show. Not Breaking Bad brutal, but for a TV-14 show, this is pretty, this show is pretty fucking intense. But this show is just insanely batshit crazy, and I fucking love it. I love all the villain portrayals. Penguin's like this backstabbing little twerp, which is a really interesting take on Penguin, because Penguin's always like this very collective, batshit crazy old man in the comics. As Danny DeVito portrayed him in Batman Returns. My favorite Batman movie, by the way, other than Dark Knight. But, no. The Riddler has a great performance in this. See, that's what I like about it. That's why I didn't like the last 2 episodes. One of my favorite renditions of the Joker was the Joker in this, because he was like this smart guy. I really liked I don't like Jerome Valeska. I liked the Joker that came after, which was Jeremiah, because he was fucking smart. When he first shows up, he blows up all the bridges in Gotham and blows up a giant clock tower just to show how powerful he is. This dude is nuts. This show is one of the best shows you'll ever watch, and I highly recommend it. It's just nuts, batshit crazy all the way to the end. Don't watch the last 2 episodes, though. It will ruin the experience. The last 2 episodes were completely unneeded, and I felt like that was to wrap up the show and get other DC shows going. Honestly, I wish so hard, because Arrow is on season 9 right now. I wish they would have just canceled Arrow and put all their work into this. Arrow, honestly, I'm going to give it to you right now, guys. It was cool all the way up until Damien Dark died, and it got shot with an arrow. Okay, it's terrible. Honestly, the last 5 seasons of Arrow are just padding now. It's terrible. It honestly is. They should have canceled Arrow in place of Gotham. Honestly. Because, I mean, I legitimately, there wasn't a character in this that I didn't like, and the characters that I didn't like, they eventually killed them off. Like, Butch's character. Butch eventually gets killed off, and I believe that was part of the show. The characters that weren't really enjoyable eventually did get killed off. And you know what? I even liked Bane's portrayal in this. Bane showed up in the last season, and I liked the crazy super soldier Bane. And you know what? I like that they kept the smart, fancy Bane voice, because he was still very philosophical with his wording, as the Bane in Dark Knight Rises was. I like that. This show is godly, and I will definitely go back and watch it sometime. Again, because I love it. Now, the first season was interesting because the first season was basically like they were trying to introduce you to our characters. We had the three Mafia Kings, which was Fish Mooney, Don Maroney, and Don Falcone, which had a son and a daughter. We also got introduced to bad guys such as Victor Zsasz, which makes several appearances and is probably my favorite interpretation of the character. I highly enjoyed the Victor Zsasz in this because he was kind of like this guy that seems nice on the surface, but definitely will hunt you down and kill you. That's why I like all the villains in this. We also got looked at other cameos of villains like Goatman and Maxie Zeus eventually showed up. He ended up dying the first episode that he showed up in, though. Well, a form of Zeus. Other villains like that. We also got so Barbara Gordon eventually the story is Barbara Gordon eventually turned into like this mafia queen as well. And the first season plunges her into that chaos. So that was another thing. But that's pretty much it, aside from the main villains, because the Riddler doesn't really do his become the Riddler till the second season around there. Neither does Penguin either, because Penguin becomes the Penguin right at the end of the first season. So we do get introduced to Edward Nygma, not the Riddler. And we also get introduced to Bruce, Alfred, Harvey Bullock, and of course that mayor that I fucking hate. We also get introduced to Butch, which eventually becomes Solomon Grundy. Barbara Gordon. We also get introduced to Kris Kringle, not Kris Kringle, the bitch. Kringle, Miss Kringle. I'm going to call her Miss Kringle. And we also get to introduce other characters like, one shocking thing though, Harvey Dent does not show up in this entire show. But, no, also we get showed James Gordon, and the Penguin eventually turns into the Penguin in the end of the season. And Don Maroney actually ends up getting killed in the first season. I forgot about that little bit. It's been so long since I've seen the first season, because I just now, literally yesterday, finished this show. So, yeah, that was pretty shocking. And you know what? This show was not afraid of killing off pretty set name Batman villains. There's some villains that, shockingly enough, get murdered in this, and it's kind of shocking. But
The second season is really where it picked up. There was not one season in this show except for the last 2 episodes, but I'm excluding them. I'm not going to talk about the last 2 episodes. Not even going to mention them. I'm going to talk about all the way up into episode 10 of this last season. That's where the show ended for me. I'm ignoring those last 2 episodes. Because they were it was a 10-year time jump and it was completely unnecessary. And don't even get me started on the fucking character designs for the Penguin. Holy shit. That was the worst part. No, I don't talk about that. But
the second season was even better than the first one. The first season was them introducing the characters, and it was understandable. The second season, though, really brought the guns out, because the second season was like, there was some real big character development in there. Like, we got the Riddler ends up like murdering somebody, then he has to murder Miss Kringle because she got in the way. He ends up falling in love with her, and eventually that leads to him getting put in Blackgate and his journey on becoming the Riddler. And eventually he becomes the Riddler in season 3. So then the big thing is we also get to see the uprising of Penguin. And eventually in season 3, he puts out this thing called Pax Penguina, where he can put out like allow criminals to rob shit and stuff. So we also get the rise of Butch's character. And in season 2, we also get a really, really interesting way of portraying, because I'm pretty sure the original character was, correct me if I'm wrong, but the original Azrael was a anti-hero. Kind of like a hero, but not really.
But there is a mayor that comes in town with another woman named Tabitha that eventually becomes one of the Sirens, which in my opinion is the feminist gang of Gotham in season 5. Because Gotham in season 5 basically gets shut off by the government and everybody starts making gangs and stuff. But Gallivant is, the mayor's name is Gallivant, and he turns into this villain named Azrael. He eventually gets killed in this season, along with Penguin helping that. And he's basically like, Gallivant is like basically the big bad villain of the season. The big bad guy. And honestly, that really shows Gallivant was an interesting character, because it was really interesting portrayal of the character. And also Fish Mooney ends up dying in the 3rd season after something that happened with Dr. Hugo Strange. This season we get introduced to a bunch of other villains. We get introduced to Hugo Strange. We get introduced to Firefly, Mr. Freeze, Azrael. We also get introduced to Jerome Valeska, which is the crazy Joker. And we also get introduced to Poison Ivy. Lots of different characters in this one. So then I want to move on to the 3rd season. The 3rd season was interesting because there was even more character development, and honestly, with all the character development, they kept it up just fine. There was this was the season where Penguin becomes mayor. There was a lot of bold choices in this season, and the main villain of the season was Jerome Valeska, and he eventually ends up getting killed at the end of the season. And that was basically like the big turning point of the show. Like, it was a big turning point for Bruce. There was also a whole thing with Poison Ivy. She was a side villain. But then the 4th season came about. And there were 2 main villains this season. It was Jeremiah, the smart Joker, and Ra's al Ghul. Which actually, they end up killing Ra's al Ghul in this season, which was actually another shocking bit. But we also get introduced to villains such as Professor Pig, which is one of my favorite villains. Professor Pig is awesome. He's this crazy guy that kills people with melee, with like knives and shit, and then he puts a severed pig carcass head on his victims. So yeah, Professor Pig ends up dying though, which is actually what I was saying when they killed off some pretty named Batman villains. Professor Pig, probably one of my favorite Batman villains, gets killed off in the season that he shows up, and he's actually a pretty complicated villain. So then the fifth season rolled around all the way up into episode 10. The fifth season was really the end all be all. They ended it perfectly. Like, the fifth season was honestly the best season in my opinion because it's where it got batshit crazy the most. So basically the government shut them off. And there's like all these fucking gangs and stuff. This season has fucking tanks, assault rifles, full-on gang raids, people getting shot left and right, blood and body parts flying, gruesome kills. This season is the end-all be-all of the show, and it was the perfect way to end the show. I mean, god damn it, in this season you have the Riddler shooting a rocket launcher into a building full of 300 women and children and killing them all. This season is nuts. It is nuts. Oh my god. I fucking love this show. Like, this is one... I think a lot of people don't appreciate this show enough. This is one really fucking dark interpretation of the show. Like, I honestly think this one's a little bit darker than Christian Bale Batman. I honestly do think that. This one has some dark moments in it. And the one thing I do got to say about the fifth season, they did introduce more villains such as Nisa Al Ghul, which was Ra's al Ghul's daughter. It also, Ventriloquist and Scarface showed up, and even Bane showed up. So, but all in all, this show, I got to give it an A+, just like Hell on Wheels. This is a good-ass show. So remember to leave a comment, like, and subscribe.